This is Ed, and thank you for being with us again, Dr. Ken Lloyd. Welcome, sir.
Thank you. Pleasure to be here.
Great. Okay, so we're going to be talking again about marketing myopia and the weirdness of it. In other words, how business people like you and I and others can get myopic. In other words, can't see the forest through the trees about some things, and whether it's not enough coffee like what I have in front of me here, but or a good night's rest or getting lost in time. What what's your take on marketing myopia?
That's so interesting. I like that you took off your glasses when you asked the question. Yeah, the situation really is when companies get, if you will, so narrow-minded, near-focused, that they are overly obsessed with their own greatness and their products and their services at the expense of, kind of, as you just did, taking off the glasses, looking in the distance, saying, all right, what's going on in the marketplace? What's going on with our customers? What's going on in related industries? It's just this intense internal short-sighted focus on one's own business, one's own entity.
Right. Okay. So now, just as an example, as I said off camera, we used to do a lot of in-person meetings, and COVID came along, and of course everything stopped. And I was afraid of the camera, but a tech guy that was working with me says he and I had done radio shows, in other words, audio, recordings for a couple of years. We've done over 100, and he says, it's going to be the same kind of thing, but you have to be camera ready. And that means that you have to comb your hair and, get the lighting right and know what you want to talk about before the show begins. Otherwise, you'll look like an idiot. So that's called camera ready and executive presence, some people will say. But the truth of the matter is just having something to say that's intelligent. And if you have somebody working with you, like I'm fortunate to have you, we have a dialogue about what ordinarily we wouldn't spend 2 minutes talking about. so
Hmm.
let's have a dialogue about uh, the business of, let's say, media. Okay, there's a big picture topic, but media in the sense that, say, Disney or Paramount um, right now is they're both huge, giant, and Disney uh, has the theme parks, has G-rated movies, and does big spectacular things. Disney also owns ABC, television network, and ESPN. So getting involved in gambling, legal gambling, is a really big deal. And they are trying not to be myopic by getting involved in all these different things, but each one is a whole different business. And so, how do you manage the people to do the actual work in these verticals?
Yeah, it's a good question. It's so interesting. Part of it is just how they define the industry that we're in. We're not in just the amusement park industry, and we're not just in the film business, if you will, use an old term. We're in entertainment. And so we don't want to be myopic and narrowly define the industry that we're in, because sometimes you can do that and suddenly the world changes. And hey, we're great. We're in the management education business and we do in-person seminars. But actually, if we're in that business, it's really much wider than that. You mentioned radio, you mentioned you're mentioning podcasts right now, television, and well beyond. It's thinking much wider, which is certainly what Disney is doing. That they can entertain people in so many different ways. Managing, of course, is a whole different prospect, and it comes down to, well, what really is effective management? What do effective managers do in terms of attracting, developing, building, and reinforcing excellent behaviors within the organization, and really making sure that we're not pushing some kind of approach that is strictly top down, but rather we are being collaborative or listening and building and recognizing that as new groups enter the workforce, certainly new generations, expectations can change. So we have to, again, be receptive to change. And that's one of the key ways of avoiding marketing myopia is accepting change, embracing change, and really responding productively and positively to it.
So one of the things that you've done in the past is that you've published books, and one of them is about dealing with jerks at work.
Sure.
So that's a great line. But we all know that. So we all know about that kind of a thing. So how would you counsel people, especially younger people who may be watching this, about dealing with oppressive bosses?
Yeah, and that's a real issue, and it's out there even today. It's an archaic style of management. If you want to use style or management in describing it, it lacks both. But initially, if it's truly an oppressive manager that you're dealing with, the first step would be: is there a way that we can sit down and talk about what it is that's oppressive? In other words, not to say, hey, you're an oppressive manager, but rather to look at behaviors and actions and suggestions. I think we could work more productively together if we tried this. When you use the word you in dealing with people and issues that you have with them, it sounds very disciplinarian, it sounds very parental, and it generates offensiveness, as opposed to coming at them from the standpoint, I'm having some difficulties in working on this project. I think if we try to approach it some different ways, are you open to talking about that? So the you was in there, but it wasn't in a directive, you did this, you did that. It's really to dialogue about it and at least see if there is a way to hit some common ground. And if they're allies who feel the same way, sometimes it might help for a couple to go in and talk and say, look, we know we can do much more for this company. We just want the opportunity to do so. Sometimes that type of thinking can resonate, but you can see it's focused more on I and we rather than you. That's the way to stay. That's really the approach not to take, and that's really where you want to stay away from that strategy.
Let's go to another topic that's sort of related to all of this about seeing clearly what we need to do today with the multi-generations within the workplace, and so many are remote or hybrid at best, and companies top-down pressure from CFO, CEO, and board about having empty office space, and they're loaded with debt, and people aren't there, and where's the productivity? It must be crazy making for the senior level these days, and it's causing a lot of disconnect that's worse than before because it's getting emotional. And you can see it in the press. Now you can't build a car remotely. You have to show up in the factory, right? And the same thing with making solar panels or something. Oil and gas. There's some things you can't work remote. Certain jobs you can do remote. Like, for instance, I could be here in San Diego and my responsibilities today are in London or Paris and maybe Mexico City. So let me ask you about your take about this concept of delegation. How do you delegate and retain control without being a puppeteer, a marionette, pulling the strings?
No, that's a great question as well, because there is a balance. The overarching is delegation is not dumping. So you don't just dump it on someone. Oh, I got that off my desk, I'm done. At the same time, it's not being the puppet master and pulling all of the strings. people people really, when they do that, just generate dissatisfaction and poor productivity. And that's not what the recipient of delegated work wants at all. I want that opportunity to show what I can do, to achieve, to demonstrate my skills, to build my skills. And as a manager, a couple of thoughts to keep in mind is one, you can delegate the authority, but you can't delegate the responsibility. So you can delegate the authority for the person to go ahead. You're going to carry this out. You have the authority to do it. But as the manager, you're still ultimately responsible. You can't say, hey, I delegated that. It's not my problem. It is still yours, which would mean your role would be to work with the person as needed, provide some coaching, some support, some guidance, let that person know that your door, literally or figuratively, is always open if there are questions. But if you're going to delegate, it in fact is an opportunity for the employee, that individual who reports to you, to learn, to grow, to develop, to contribute. Employees seek that. And as a manager, that's what you want to be doing. You want to be building your team and frankly, generate that additional time for yourself to work on other projects. If you're out there pulling all the strings, you haven't delegated it at all. All you've done is you're doing the work. You've got another person in it who's getting annoyed because you keep getting in the way. And you end up with a second-rate outcome anyhow, because it's kind of a hodgepodge of what the person wanted to do and what you were trying to get done. So delegating really is an important way to continue to manage, but to make it part of your coaching and development and results-oriented program. And you're still responsible for it.
Is there a book or a TV show or a video that explains pictorially about how to do that, how not to behave, or coaching techniques for someone who's feeling, like me, I'm a middle manager and I'm reporting to you and you report to the board. And so I've had some successes, and so you're trusting me with this delegation. So how would you like me to give you feedback? How often would you like it by text, or would you like to do a one-on-one like this?
Yeah, these days the movement is toward continuous feedback. And that doesn't mean, like hovering like the helicopter parenting, but it does mean on a regular basis, touching base with the employees. You can let the employees, members of your team, set up the meeting if they want, but regular ongoing communication, literally weekly at worst, or even, well, sometimes it depends on what the project is. It can be more often than that, but certainly no more than every couple of weeks to check in, to talk, certainly adding on to that informal contact and communication. So this would be, if you will, regular weekly meetings. They can be brief, but they're not going to be text, and it's not going to be email. It can be in person or it can be remotely, just like we're having a meeting now. But it would be suggested to be once a week as part of the development and, if you will, performance evaluation process. I'm giving you feedback. I'm giving you coaching. We're talking about work. We're talking about your career. We're talking about your continued development and certainly the projects. Where are we on the goals that we've collaboratively established? Do we need to talk a little bit more about that? How can I help you get to it? So typically the movement is toward weekly follow-up, weekly discussions with the employees as part of that continuous feedback process.
This is really interesting. I thank you for doing this impromptu meeting about marketing myopia. As you could tell out there, audience, it's not scripted, but but we do wing it successfully. And so, Dr. Ken Lloyd, what do you have your PhD in?
My PhD is through the School of Management at UCLA. My specialty is in an area called organizational behavior, which really is studying human behavior in organizations. And that was the program.
Okay, this is great. Thanks for being in this brief one-on-one, and I welcome you to come back when we do subsequent editions.
Thank you. Always enjoyable to do this and to see you, Ed. Thank you so much.
Thanks. Take care.
You too.